So we're going to go in depth on Blueprint to kind of talk about how it enveloped the process side of things for CRM from start to finish. So, everything from assigning different leads or records to a specific individual, automating some emails to get sent out, creating tasks, all these different things, approval processes. So those two things are different features, and they're very segmented at the moment, where you have your process set up, you have your different status fields, your different stages, and the workflows can kind of fit in here and there about what it could do and some of the things that you can pretty much lay out inside the system. Now, there's a little bit of a gap between the two, and there's a couple of things that happen in that qualification or that sales process that end up getting you into a car and out that dealership. So someone walks in the door at a dealership, or they express some type of interest, they go to the website. A couple of ways that leads are generated, right? So when that new lead comes in, you collect that information. There's a couple of things that can happen as a next step. You can give them a call, they don't pick up the phone, and you leave them a voicemail, right? So 3 possible things can happen. You can leave them a voicemail, you actually get them on the phone and you talk to them a little bit, or they're super qualified and they want to actually have a test drive. So 3 possible things can happen to someone that's a new lead and is looking for a new car, right? Or it can go through a different process where you actually leave them a voicemail and then you call them back and they're contacted and you actually have that conversation with them. And then you go from actually being on the phone with them to actually going into the dealership and test driving that vehicle, right? So it could either go from 1 and all the way through, or just straight into test drive. And of course, after you go through that test drive, then that sales rep kind of figures out that this person's qualified, right? Pretty standard process, and it can go through multiple variations of this, but each and every one of these leads, if they actually close a sale, they end up going through a test drive and being qualified. But at any particular point in time, someone will say, hey, you know what? I don't think this is a good idea. I might go to another dealership. I don't like what you're giving me right now. So they can be not interested at any point in time in this qualification process, right? So keep that in your heads for a little bit, and we'll kind of discuss this in the demo portion when I go into it. So the key takeaway here is that this entire process that I kind of laid out is pretty much a traditional process for dealerships across the board. And of course, you guys have your own qualification process as well for leads. And as you understand those intricacies and what steps are involved, then that's where you need to go and scale up your CRM and your sales process essentially to the next level. And what the current problem is that sales reps or anyone who's interacting with these leads like yourselves would be able to go into that lead status field, basically be able to change it to anything, right? There's no real power or compliance of how it goes from one step to the next, right? I could literally click another button and it goes to the next step and it's not supposed to be there. Like maybe I accidentally marked it as a junk lead when they're not. Or I said they're qualified when I haven't even talked to them yet. There's no real visibility or compliance for how it goes through that process. So that's the current problem. And a lot of people are facing that with our CRM now. But that's where Blueprint actually comes into play. Blueprint forces each one of those leads to go through the same exact process from start to finish. So everyone has the same experience in the CRM. They go from start to finish across the board, right? And so you can even visualize that with the Blueprint Builder. You literally can drag and drop those different statuses that you have for leads or the deal stages, for example, and physically move them from one stage to the other. So it ensures that process compliance. Everyone has to go through that start all the way through this entire process until that person's actually qualified or moves on to the next phase, right? And visually for the sales rep, Blueprint becomes a mechanism and sort of a guideline for how they are supposed to go through that process. At the top of the page, they'll be able to see these different buttons of where they can go from one step to the next. So they know exactly what their options are. And then when they actually click on that button, then you can even display certain things that they have to fill out, like the negotiation, info, the discount percentage, whatever you would want to put into this form. And we'll actually talk about the intricacies of this in the demo. So it allows you to set up that process so that the sales rep knows what information to fill in and what they need to actually talk to that person about when they're moving from that one stage to the next. And then they can easily adapt faster. So if you're bringing on a new sales rep, you haven't talked to them before, or they've never been in sales, you can use this as sort of a training guideline as well to get them ramped up and a little bit more involved and enveloped into what the actual start to finish is going to be. So they can actually follow some type of guideline versus just messing around with the CRM and not knowing what they're doing. Okay? And then, of course, we have some built-in reports and dashboards that give you this capability to see how successful Blueprint is on the back end. So what it is from start to finish, how much time each one of these leads or deals are sitting in these stages, how much time has been spent, and things of that nature. And then, of course, as those statuses are moving, or states, then you can initiate some of those other workflows that we discussed, like sending out the same email, creating a task for someone, and even custom scripting. So a lot of those things can be done in pretty much the same way. So we're combining that sales process that we initially talked about in the beginning, and then we're combining that workflow automation and putting them together in Blueprint, right? Those two pieces that were kind of segmented, they connected in a couple of different ways, but now with Blueprint, they're a lot more streamlined and can do pretty much everything from start to finish. So if we come back to that lead qualification process that we discussed, you get a new lead, you can either give them a call and leave a voicemail, you actually get them on the phone and maybe collect some information from them, or they actually want to have a test drive and they're qualified. And then again, at any certain point in the entire process, they can not be interested. Okay, so I'm going to go into a quick demo of the actual process. So this is actually my blueprint that I laid out here. Before I actually get into that, I'm just going to show you where exactly that is. So if I go back to my Zoho CRM page, of course this is just the home screen, and I go over to Setup on the top right, and then under Automation I go to Blueprint over here. Then it shows me the blueprints that I've already set up. I have a couple for my leads. I think I created a couple of others for maybe deals and a few others as well. But for now, we're just going to show that lead qualification one. So again, it starts here. I can either leave them a voicemail, and this is that transition. I can initiate that first contact, or they want to have a test drive. Okay. And then, of course, they can go through the process of being left a voicemail, actually getting them on the phone, and then test driving them. So there's a couple of different paths or routes that they can actually take, right? So let's take a look at one of these. Let's just say I initiate the first contact. I get a lead on the phone, right? So I'm going to click on this one that I have here. Okay. So on the right-hand side, there's a couple of things that you can configure for each of these transitions that it goes from one step to the next. So first is the before. Before means you can determine who can actually click this button that says I made the first contact, and then when exactly they can do that. So for me, it's the sales rep in my business. So that means I want the record owner, the person that's actually handling the lead, to be the one to click that button. We can think of this in a couple of different ways. Maybe another team is involved to click another button, like approve credit info for the finance team, something like that. You can involve other people to be able to click a certain button. And then during is where you have a pop-up page. When they actually click the button, that pops up a list of information that they need to collect, and even a message that you want to display to them so they know what to do when they initiate that first contact. So I want to collect their email address. I'm going to select what type of car that they want, whether it be an SUV, a sedan, a convertible, and what color. So pretty basic information. And then it even displays a message for them that says, make sure to ask the lead what type of car that they're looking for so we can get them on the road faster, right? Just a quick, helpful message. And then I also made notes mandatory. So that means that they have to fill in just a couple of key details about how the call went, right? So all that will pop up on the page. Then, after that button is clicked, after they submit that information, then there's the after section. And this is where all those workflows and custom functions come into play. So I have a task that's created that is assigned to the sales rep, and it gives them 2 days to call them back about that vehicle that they're interested in. So in 2 days, they have to call that person back, and it comes into their task list. All right. Let's take a look at another one. Let's go to the test drive. Let's just say that this person is actually interested in test driving the vehicle. That during section has a couple of other things. So it made notes mandatory so I can say how the test drive went. And then I have this thing called budget. They have to fill in the budget of this person. But there's something else that I added in here, which is called validation. So if their budget is less $10,000, then this message pops up. They say, are you serious? We have to make money somehow, right? So they have to fill in at least $10,000 for this transition to be saved. And I did something else for decision date. So when they actually want to buy the car. And if it's not within this week, I tell them, hey, we only want to talk to people who want to buy now, right? We don't want them to focus on anyone that's not here and actually serious. So you can actually add some validation on that info so that they don't just put something arbitrary. They'll have to put in something that's actually important, that is useful for the lead qualification process and the sales process moving forward. Okay? And of course, I have some other after messages. So an email gets sent out to the lead, such as a follow-up email. I'll just show you a little bit of what the template looks like. Pretty simple stuff. Hey there, lead's first name. It was a pleasure having you come into the dealership today. Here's some more information about me. Give me a call if you have any other questions. Pretty simple. Cool. All right. And then, of course, on top of the email, I have another task that's created as well. And then if I go to my qualification section, I'm just going to go into after. It even sends an email to the manager and lets them know, hey, there's this person who's ready to talk dollars and wants to actually buy this vehicle. So they're qualified at that point. All right. So that's how it is on the back end. And that's how you can kind of configure these things and see exactly what's going on from start to finish. If you notice on the left-hand side, I have this button called not interested, right? At any point in time in that sales process, what we were talking about here is that at any point in time, this person cannot be interested. They want to leave. They decided to go with another dealership. They don't want to talk about this vehicle anymore. So we have this thing called common transitions. That means that at any point in time, whichever state that they're in, regardless, I can hit that not interested button and it'll say that this is a junk lead now, someone that was lost. Okay? And I added a quick note that says, please provide notes as to why they're not interested. So that's how I was able to build it out. And I can see that from a visual perspective. Okay, so I'm going to move over to my actual lead page here. So I'm going to go to my leads. I'm going to click on Alexi Sanchez from Arsenal. He wants to buy a Ferrari from me, probably. So a sales rep tries to give him a call. And as you can see, those 3 transitions are there. Left voicemail, first contact, or test drive. So let's just say someone tried to give him a call, left a voicemail. It even pops up a script for me for what to say on the voicemail. Hi there, this is my name, Dream Cars Pleasanton, and just wanted to give you a call, so on and so forth. And then I can add in a quick note that said left VM. Then when I move it, then that next transition is first contact. So I give him a call again, hit first contact, collect some certain information, add in a note about how the call went. Call went well. I can add in this other detail for the email address, the card type that he wants, and what color. Just like what we displayed on the screen, I'll just move it to blue. And then the next transition is test drive. Right? So then I can click test drive. I can put in that information, and let's just say that I try to put in $9,000. I don't know why he would have a budget of $9,000 since he plays for Arsenal, but let's just put that in there. And then I'm going to say that he wants to make a decision next week. And I'll say test drive went super. Right? And I try to save that. There you go. So those 2 things will show up automatically when I try to save it. So it locks down that type of transition from happening if the right information is not put in. Okay? So I'm going to move this back to $100,000 probably. And he wants to buy today, hopefully. And I'm going to say save. Okay? So all that is done, right? Those notes appear. Those transitions are set up over here as well. And then if I go down to my activities, then those tasks that I had created for those different blueprints will show up, and that email that I sent would also appear as well. So obviously this wouldn't happen in the matter of 30 seconds, I hope, but you could see that all that information, all those tasks and emails will send out and be automatically created as those transitions take place. So that's a little bit about how the transition process goes from one to the other. And of course, if I hit ready to talk, it's going to go ahead and notify the finance team or someone else on that team that they're ready to talk business as well. So all that happens from start to finish, and then I can convert them and move them over to a contact and opportunity. Yeah, that's a little bit about how that blueprint process is brought into play, right? We had those three. He was eventually qualified, and he was ready to talk business, and eventually he was ready to roll and be converted. Okay. Now you're probably thinking a lot of these things are very similar to workflows, right? A lot of those same things that we talked about as far as sending out the same email, creating the tasks. You might have already done this in your account, right? So, if the deal status is changed to proposal, then create a task for the finance guy, or maybe when it's closed won, send a thank you email. Some of those you might have already done. So the thing is, Blueprint will be the replacement to some of those workflows. The key word is some, not everything. There's still very necessary reasons why you would still need a workflow and where Blueprint wouldn't come into play or would not be effective, essentially. So let's talk about the importances of Blueprint first, and then we'll talk about the important key items of workflows. So first, Blueprint, again, forces a person to follow a certain process, right? They have to put in that required information, and you can put in some validation on that, right? So, the decision date, the budget, setting up those mean messages, all that will show up in Blueprint. That's not something that workflows can do. Another thing is that it guides those reps in that specific process. So for training purposes, they'll know exactly what buttons to click and where something is from one step to the next. Okay? So it's easier for them to get trained. They don't have to get lost. And actually, certain things will be locked down for them as they move along. And then lastly, you can assign different steps in that Blueprint process to different people. So I didn't give this example in this demo, but essentially, if there was like some type of credit process for this dealership where they had to take in a customer's, credit information or run a credit check, then maybe the finance guy would have to be involved in that. So then I can assign this certain button that can only be processed by that finance person or that other user. Or maybe it requires some type of approval from a manager before a discount can be made. Only that record owner's manager has the capability of clicking that button for the process to continue, right? So for those specific reasons, you can provide that security to know that the right people are involved in the process from start to finish as well. And workflows can't do that. So why use workflows instead of Blueprint? They're still very, 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 very important. Okay, you'll need both. While workflows involve any and all conditions, Blueprint is just based on a linear process, right? So qualified to, from new lead, not interested, contacted, qualified, so on and so forth, some type of linear process. But workflows can match any and all conditions. It doesn't have to be a certain process. It could be if these certain fields are created or entered, or a record is deleted, or other things are other criteria set up. It can pretty much match anything. But Blueprint follows a certain strict process. And then lastly, some workflows, of course, can that you've configured already would be replaced by Blueprint, but not all. Okay, so that's a little bit about what Blueprint can do. It's there to streamline your process, of course, and make it clear, understandable, and repeatable. The last thing about that is that eventually, as you continue to use Blueprint and sort of streamline your process and use this to kind of scale everything, you'll eventually get to something as complex as this, where it may be not just linear, but things might go backwards Things might go side to side and then eventually end up in the qualification stage or closed, right? It doesn't have to go in a linear direction. So as you continue to use it, it will go to something like this. But this is not just a lead qualification process. It can work for deals. It can work for other things like quotes. This is one example that I created where I'm using the quotes module, for example. It goes from draft to delivered to received, confirmed, negotiation, discount approved, discount rejected. It can get pretty intricate, right? So this is an example of how it would be used for quotes in a traditional format. You can maybe use it for other modules like campaigns, where you might use the campaigns module to go through some type of process to plan, to go through budget analysis, to submit the proposal, to activating it. So maybe this will be useful for your marketing team. So these are some of the modules of how it can work now in the CRM. So not just for qualifying leads or closing sales or deals in the CRM, but quotes, sales orders, invoices, campaigns, custom modules if you wanted to as well. This is pretty much all available for you. And eventually, it's not going to be just for the CRM. Think of it in other departments, right? Yet. Not just yet. So think about it from an HR perspective, right? You post new job opportunities online. You maybe post it to LinkedIn or to your actual website, Glassdoor, whatever. And for that, you need to have some type of manager's approval to make sure that the job post is correct, it's putting up the right information, so on and so forth. And for that, you'll need to have some type of process to get that approval. Or maybe going through the application and interview process. So as you get applicants in, you need to be able to make sure that they are communicated with, those transitions are set up, you schedule the interviews, and that goes through an entire process. Or you could think about it for onboarding new employees. As you hire those people, then they might need to go through some type of training process. You can think of Blueprint in that light as well. Let's talk about accounting. Maybe for, just like we talked about in quotes, you might need to draft and submit invoices in a certain step-by-step flow. And even closing balances for the year, essentially. You need to have a whole process laid out for who needs to do what and what changes need to be made before the books are being closed. And even finalizing your taxes. And then we could think about it from a customer support perspective. For logging and closing tickets, you might need to go through some type of communication with the customer before it's closed, get their understanding and feedback, things like that. Or for other things, if you need to escalate those issues to other people, to another manager, to another department, then that might have to go through some type of process.